Hello and welcome back to another Warcraft video. This time it's going to be, well, the first of one of my longer kind of discussion videos, and we're going to be talking about how we can grow World of Warcraft. And of course, by we, I mean Blizzard, because it's not our bloody job to grow the game. Anyway, so in the first part of this, I'm going to be talking about how we can get new players, and just sort of focusing on the front end of World of Warcraft, because honestly, I think we could all agree that really the start of WoW isn't the best. The starter edition isn't that great. And Blizzard have always, said that the starter edition and that kind of thing, it's got a high bounce-off rate. A lot of people come in, they don't really get enthused because they're never shown anything cool, and then they just disappear again, and that's basically just a lost person. So there's that, and as time goes on, World of Warcraft, it's getting old, it really is getting old. We are at 10 years now, and I think 7.6 million subscribers, and really, we're actually at a key point at the minute, because in the most recent quarterly earnings report, we found out that the game only lost 100,000 subscriptions. Now that was actually down from 500,000 the previous month, and then some giant number the month before that. What this means is that the tide of lost subscribers is perhaps at least momentarily slipping, and with Warlords of Draenor having such a strong appeal to people's nostalgia and that kind of thing, I think there really is just a great opportunity to grow the game, so let's jump straight into the video, and we're going to talk about getting new players. So this is really just sort of some things that we can improve within the game's current structure. So basically the whole starter edition, and then I'll move on and talk a little bit about the leveling process. And then after that I will chat about some endgame stuff, and then some more business orientated things, but honestly I don't know if they're going to make it in this video or not. I'm going to cap this out at half an hour. So, yeah, if we do hit over half an hour, then I'll just split things into the other video. I don't really expect people to sit down and listen to me for an hour. I'm not that crazy and narcissistic. Anyway, so the starter edition. Right now, it's not very good. It doesn't last very long, but I think more importantly, it shows people the most boring parts of the game. Blizzard have already said that the game doesn't have a great retention rate when it comes to the trial edition. Now, why is this? Well, think about it. People come in, they start off at level 1, they can get up to level 20, and there's not a great deal of cool shit that happens then. Well, okay, it kind of depends. Sometimes there may be. I think a lot of the starter zones, they're kind of hit and miss. I think the Pandaren one, for an example, it's pretty, but it doesn't have a lot of substance to it. I think the Worgen one and the Goblin one are perhaps the most interesting to new players, but still, there's not a big wave of excitement. When people try out a new game, often what they want is they really want to just be grabbed by the horns, because, people now have horns in my world, and they want to be grabbed by their horns and fucking just shoved into this game, which is full of action and excitement and cool things, and the trial just does not do that. Okay, so yeah, the trial does not do that for a lot of times, and since it only gets you to level 20, you never get to see a glimpse of that endgame stuff. In fact, you could probably do the trial without even knowing the PvP, dungeons, scenarios, the Timeless Isle, like all that sort of stuff. You could just not know that any of that exists. I'd say just about the coolest thing you will get to see is perhaps Kazan if you're a goblin, and then maybe having a little dander into Redridge, because it has some pretty cool quests. That's the coolest you're going to get to see in the trial, and honestly, how many of us play the game for Redridge, or play the game for Kazan? I think that's nearly none of us, honestly. So what really is important is, how do we fix this? How do we make the game a little bit better in the front, and make the trial itself better? So first of all, I think what they need to do is show more than just the first bunch of levels in the game. Now, I don't necessarily mean just boost you up to like max level or something ridiculous like that. No. But I think the vast majority of our game, or of our time in the game, is spent at max level doing max level things, or at least things that say max level in terms of their gameplay value and their epicness. What they need to do is bring some of that gameplay value, bring some of that epicness down into a format where it just works within the trial. So, how do they do this? What do they do? Well, it's very hard, honestly. They can't just send people into a raid or something like that, because obviously they just don't have the skill. Nor can they do the same with an arena or any kind of high-end PvP content. Like, hell, PvP, it's kind of hard. You need to know a lot about other classes, and that really does leave us in a hard spot. Because you can't just flat out show these endgame systems and mechanics. I think what you need to do is show a glimpse of the epic, a glimpse of just the kind of level of gameplay that they're going for. So I suppose the easiest thing would just to be to do some sort of proving ground style thing, you know? And sure, this would be great at getting people to understand abilities, and perhaps they'd appreciate some parts of the game a little bit more, but I really, really do not think this would be fun. At all. I mean, how many of us just go to proving grounds at max level? Really not that many, and while I'm sure there'd be a useful tool to new players that want to go into dungeons or something like that, I severely doubt that it would be something that would actually come off as being cool near the start of the game. You know, anytime you play a game, you're stuck into a tutorial, and it's not, say, Far Cry 3 Blood Dragon, where the tutorial's just taking the piss out of itself. The tutorial's usually kind of a pain in the arse, honestly, and WoW does not have that great a tutorial at the minute. So yeah, where are we? Well, we're still in our kind of hard spot. We can't do PvP, we can't do instanced PvE, and we're left right back where we started with only shitty leveling to do. The current structure is bad. It's not going to work, and it's not going to get a lot of new people into the game. So what other structures could they implement? I guess that's the big question. Well, I think the first idea that I have really isn't going to happen. It would be too much work, and I think that it's a half decent idea, so hear me out. And basically, they need to put players right into the game with a bang. So right now, when you start off, it's like the zones are fine, you know, they're not great, but they are a lot better than vanilla. I suppose we can all, at least many of us can agree on that. But people like epic stuff. They like defending sieges, having large battles, epic boss fights, vehicles, badassery, things that are cool. We are humans, we like shiny things, we like boisterous things, and we get absolutely none of that near the start of the game. We just don't. And now, if you compare to some other games, I remember, was it Guild Wars 2? Yeah, I thought as a human I had a really cool little start. And of course, it did wear thin for me later on, but that game threw me into a siege where I was running around with an NPC. We were slashing things up, there was other players there, we were all slashing things. This castle fell down or something crazy like that. And that really got me into the game, initially, and I was really thinking, wow, this is damn cool. World of Warcraft doesn't do that. World of Warcraft is supposed to be the best MMO. Blizzard are supposed to be the biggest MMO developer with the biggest budget. So why don't they do something cool like this? So, here's idea one. Put people into a really large, in terms of scale, scenario sort of style thing that is full of absurdly epic stuff. Now, whether it's a scenario or not, I will talk about in a minute, because I actually do think there are some inherent problems to scenarios. So, for example, in the human zone, instead of the orcs just hanging out in that field, if you haven't done the human zone, you're just chilling out in Northshire Abbey, it's all fine, and then you realise, oh no, the vineyard, there are Blackrock orcs in the vineyard. Oh, well that's fine, I'll just go and kill them. But when people think of orcs, they think of marauding bands of fucking orcs with axes killing people. Well, how about instead of the orcs just sitting there in their field, they actually come out and fucking attack you? You know, there's a quest, you accept this quest, and maybe it loads you into a scenario, or it phases you into a special instance, where there's a giant orc attack, and maybe you and an NPC that is following you out throughout that zone have to go and defend the abbey actively. You know, like actual active defending, where something is being attacked. Well, that's fine, you run over there, maybe a few other NPCs follow you, so it really gives you a sense of agency and like you're kind of the leader. And they would actually need to make it feel like there is perhaps a slight chance of failure, just so people actually do kind of get it in their head that there's stuff at risk, even though there probably wouldn't be. So yeah, perhaps level 5, these orcs launch a full-scale attack, and you along with some other NPCs, and perhaps with some other players, if they are there, of course, fight off a massive and epic-looking assault, finishing in some sort of really cool boss fight. And but maybe before this main boss fight, the main hero NPC could ask the player if they want to damage, if they're a DPS. And okay, I wouldn't say tank, because really we don't have the tanking abilities at that level, but maybe heal, because maybe a healer would just have their basic heal spell at level 5, I'm honestly not particularly sure. But they could have some interesting gameplay going on there, where they could introduce people to the scale and grandeur of leveling? No, of raiding, and they could introduce people to that scale, not grandeur, while still having them in a relatively controlled environment, but they're still making it feel like it's large and epic and cool and something that they're going to remember. Something that really inspires them to think, wow, I want to get to max level and I want to do this, but instead of this guy being an NPC, he's going to be another player that I know. They need to communicate that kind of thing. It really gives players a sense of scale and a sense of role, rather than the kind of shitty things that we have currently. We remember lots of cool moments, like the Battle of the Undercity, the attack on Light's Hope Chapel in the Death Knight starter zone, and things like that. Maybe even the Battle of Gilneas. I think the Battle of Gilneas was pretty good, actually. It wasn't perfect, maybe it wasn't that well implemented, but it was still something you remembered. You know, the very start of that, when all the NPCs grabbed their stuff and there was all the, you know, sort of quote epic speech, that kind of thing, that was still cool. And if you were coming into a game and you see that Worgen zone, I think it's one of the better examples where it does actually throw you into some cool stuff. I don't think it does really enough of explaining what kind of roles you could possibly have at endgame, nor does it particularly need to in a very bespoke and what's the word? Whatever. It doesn't need to just flat out say in your face, oh yeah, tank heal DPS, but it can at least sort of give vibes of that idea. But anyway, cool moments like that are things we all remember, so why not start the game off in a way like that that really gets people convinced the game is actually cool? A proper big boss fight, not just one where, like in the Gilneas thing, where you fight Sylvanas, but do you really fight Sylvanas? No, the NPCs fight Sylvanas, there's never much risk, is there? No, there really isn't any risk, and it's kind of funny, because they need to find a way of making it so that there is maybe a little bit of risk in these kind of, I'm just going to call them scenarios because it's a decent word for it, I don't necessarily mean the actual scenario system they have, but they would need to make it feel like there was a little bit of risk. Perhaps you can die, or something like that, or maybe they just thrust you into a role of a little bit of responsibility, something where the player can actually think, within the first X amount of time in their trial, I have just done something cool. And instead of just, you know, I went to that field and I killed a few orcs, and then I turned in the quest and I got a pair of really, really fancy cloth pants. It's not epic. Not at all. So this could either be a world-based thing or a scenario thing. Now, Modern Blizzard does seem to be really cool with just throwing everything into a scenario that's story-wise. We know this from, say, Isle of Thunder, okay? I think there's a major problem with that. It puts this cool story and stuff like that behind a wall with a loading screen. It feels cordoned off, it feels staged, and it feels put on. The more seamless the better, in my opinion. I remember some of those really cool things like the Battle of the Undercity, where I had 4 minutes to wait outside the battle, outside the Undercity, because the battle hadn't started yet. And what that made the player feel is, this is a battle that is happening, it's happening in a certain amount of time, it's not just a thing that I talk to the NPC and trigger. It feels a little bit more out of the player's control. And the other great thing about the Battle for the Undercity was it's a thing that you participated in with multiple players. And with their cross-realm technology, they can keep all of the starter zones decently populated. Meaning you can, with your legion of other newbie friends, go in and do an epic mini-raid, or, you know, like this epic event, something really cool. You can go and do that at just a regular, normal level. That would be great. So, yeah, in my opinion, don't make it a scenario. That just feels cordoned off, put on, and really, the more seamless the better. Phase everyone into this awesome, awesome phase. So there's just one way, one interesting way that we can introduce the game. Let's go with another, because, yeah, I mean, that's a way it's kind of cool, but perhaps, you know, people could say it's a little bit resource intensive. So, let's go to another way. And this is that players could perhaps be given a glimpse of some of the cool content they could do in the future. Maybe a narrator talks, gives them like a, let's just say, like when you go into the game or something like that, or maybe after you learn some basic mechanics, the narrator takes you into this tale about great heroes and great deeds, and takes you back to something like the Battle of Mount Hyjal, not the shitty Burning Crusade raid, but the actual fucking badass battle. Maybe the War of the Ancients, or some sort of similar thing. They show you this giant big battle, maybe you control a hero, and you can control a hero, maybe they only have 4 abilities, and they give you maybe a minute or whatever, just a certain amount of time to just read them and then kind of go on ahead. Now this allows Blizzard to show off what the real limits of their game's prowess is. Yeah, we're running on a really, really, really old engine, like this is a Warcraft 3 engine. This is, you think Call of Duty is running on an old engine? Holy shit. It's like, as someone who is involved in the whole programming kind of game design like sector of things, it really is amazing that Blizzard are able to pull off like so much stuff in that engine. It's quite a feat, but they can do some really cool stuff. They can present people a really cool version of the game, so therefore why don't they do this? And this would allow Blizzard to just show people what they can do, give them a peek at some really cool high-level abilities, maybe even stick in a vehicle section to show that kind of mechanic. Basically, just things like that. And this wouldn't exactly be giant in terms of workload for Blizzard either, because really you could just do 1 or 2 battles and that would cover everyone. Of course, this would be a problem with, say, multiple characters or something like that, so I'm not too sure specifically how that would work out, but in general I think you get my drift. With both of these points, they're really just different ways of throwing the player into something truly epic in the first trial period of the game. And what's going to get you to buy that £9.99 World of Warcraft set that has every expansion apart from the most recent one? What's going to get you to buy that is something really cool. Now, in terms of other things they could do, I'd say perhaps they could say introduce abilities at slightly better times. Some classes feel a little bit incomplete early on, so rejigging up 1 or 2 abilities, and I really only mean 1 or 2, just to give a base rotation to show people, and just ensure that is there for every class. This just allows people to feel more of a core of their class just a little bit earlier on. I think that would really be quite nice. Now, as far as restrictions go, I think most of them are actually fair, because gold farming and spamming and that kind of thing, it's something that we want to stay, like, just to keep dead. We want it dead and buried, and right now, well, it's not dead and buried, but it's certainly getting there, isn't it? I mean, you do get the odd real ID request that's actually a gold farmer, but really, it's not as bad as it used to be. And if any remember back in the Wrath of the Lich King days, holy shit, you'd log in, and in each play session you'd probably get whispered at least once, or maybe twice, by random level 1s. Hell, I even remember back, they used to get loads of different trial accounts, and I don't know what kind of script they would write, but they would actually get them to type in /sleep or /dead, like 50, 60 different trial accounts, and they would all form some, like, they'd all form words in the floor. It was kind of ridiculous. But in general, though, this kind of spam, stuff like that, is really, it got curved off quite heavily by this, so really I'm okay with the main restrictions. Now, there is one restriction which I do personally take a bit of an issue with, and that's the fact that players cannot join guilds. I think this is actually a really big problem, because what keeps a lot of us in World of Warcraft is our guild. You have a bunch of people you talk to when you log in, someone says hello and welcomes you into the game. Even just that one interaction, that one feeling, it all increases the level of investment with the player. And right now, if you are, like, doing the trial, it's a very isolated experience. The trial purposefully isolates the player from guild play and that sort of thing right from the get-go, when Blizzard will freely admit that their game is designed to be played with friends. It's a massively multiplayer online role-playing game. Massively multiplayer, they're the first 2 words in that genre. And it really is killed off instantly by the intro, so I think that's definitely something that should be fixed. When you think about it logically, if someone just joins up into the trial, and maybe they hit level 5 and they guild up with some people, or maybe they're just invited to one of those giant big leveling guilds. There always seems to be one of them on every server, or every faction even. There's just this giant guild which recruits everyone, and they're just fucking humongous. Even if they get into that group, at least it means every time they log into their trial account, they can see there's maybe 5, 10, 15 other people online, and while they might not initially know any of these people, they might not even talk to them, they at least know that there's a pool of people there who are playing the game with them, and they perhaps think, well, maybe by the time I'm level 40 I will have started chatting to people, maybe I'll make a few friends. And it's that sort of investment that really is what keeps us main WoW players in the game for so long. So that's definitely what I think they should do there, and that's it as far as the trial goes. The next thing I'm going to be talking about is the leveling curve. Honestly, this is something that probably is due its own video, but I suppose, hey, let's just get into it. So, the leveling curve. Well, even with the Cataclysm revamp, there are still just so many zones which are not fun. When I was leveling my monk recently, which is currently level 34, I realised that after Westfall and Red Ridge Mountains, the leveling got old again. The cool new mechanics and the fun storytelling were gone, and they were nearly replaced with the kinda crappy vanilla-style questing, where nothing really felt cohesive or stuck together, it was just one big thing. it's funny in Cataclysm, it's as if there are some zones which really got particular special attention, and then many other zones which... what would the best way to be? They just kind of got sliced a little bit. But they sliced out bits, but it still just didn't overall make a really fun and cohesive zone. I found that a lot with, say, well, it's the one after Darkshire, Northern Barrens, not Northern wow, that was one. Northern Stranglethorn Vale. I was really looking forward to going in there and seeing what they had done with this whole jungle thing, and then I realised, oh, the Curzon quests are the same, and just things were not fun, they felt like a slog. So yeah, the cool new gameplay mechanics and fun storytelling are the things that are really good, I suppose, in the older leveling thing, but overall, since they're not in every zone, and the levels of quality really they're just all over the place, it doesn't end up being as good an experience as it can be. And then there's also time, because while the Cataclysm 1-60 revamp is fantastic, in terms of, well, I suppose in comparison to vanilla, you are still left with the Burning Crusade, and then you're left with Wrath of the Lich King, then you're left with Cataclysm, and then you're left with Mists of Pandaria, then you have Warlords of Draenor to level through. That is a lot of damn quests, and it's a lot to ask of absolutely anyone, so I think some of the proposals I'm going to go through here, they really do cover a wide variety of things, so do just listen to all the different options. I think there's about 5 of them, but yeah, hell, let's just jump into it. So first of all, there is the easy way, and it's just accelerating the XP gain. It's really fast for Blizzard to implement, it's really damn easy, and it's going to mean you're going to level up quicker. It's also really, really terrible. Really damn terrible. What would happen is you would just level up faster than the zones are designed for. Now this has a terrible effect on new players because it's all about how the game plays out. They are taken out of the game world and pulled into looking at their map, their XP bar, and their quest log in just a flurry of confusion and whoa, I'm in this zone and now I'm too high level, did I do something wrong, did I go to the wrong place, should I start abandoning quests and maybe I shouldn't take some of those random quests that I see along the way. It confuses people, and that's really bad, and I suppose to a lot of us who are really experienced at this game, these are all natural. They're not really questions, but to a new player, it's damn confusing. Like, if you are really invested in, say, the story of Thousand Needles, yet all the quests are grey, and you think, oh, these are grey, why are they grey? And then you realise, oh, I'm really not getting that much experience, or any at all. Then you get really confused, and that takes you away from your enjoyment. So, yeah, only those who... Like, the only people who actually persist in this sort of whole adventure are the people who are fine with just leaving zones half-finished, only getting half the story, half the payoff, and also, when I say half, often a story is even just a quest chain. Some zones have got a quest chain which lasts the entire zone, right? Well, there's a bit of a problem there, because if you outlevel the zone before you get to the end of the chain, you don't get the payoff from the cool quest chain. Imagine in Redridge with the whole John J. Keishan quest line, which is essentially Rambo. Imagine if you missed out on the last few quests of that. It just wouldn't be the same. So, yeah, what happens is, some people make it through, and they think, huh, this is a bit shit, and then other people just give up because they think, oh my god, this is confusing, there's user interface elements all over the place, I'm looking at my quest log, I don't know what to do, I'm confused, I'm playing Guild Wars 2, or I'm playing another MMO. Which, by the way, is totally fine. I am pro other MMOs being fantastic, because the more competition, the better, and that's why I want World of Warcraft to be better, because it puts more competition on other MMOs, which will then put more competition, hopefully, back on World of Warcraft, which means everyone who plays an MMO, this great genre that we all love, everyone gets a better game. So, how could they do this option 1 better? Well, they could simultaneously buff experience points, and then decrease what is needed to, like, ding, and then actually remove quests, so it's really multiple strikes there, hitting it at multiple levels, but what this means is, because quests are being removed, the bad quests are being removed, the experience needed is being cut, and then the amount of XP you get is being increased. This means that players really, they just get to see the proper journey through zones, since Blizzard would have removed the shitty quests, and it would feel, hopefully, a little bit more like the fun and fast-paced romp through zones, which is what they described Warlords of Draenor leveling as being. It's fast, there's less of the bad quests, and there's no more of the whole out-leveling a zone problem. That sounds great, right? Well, there is one problem, and I'm going to catch you all before you write angry comments. And it's a problem that I noticed a lot back during Cataclysm. Now, Cataclysm was actually... I'm not too sure if I dislike Cataclysm more than Mists in terms of leveling, but this is also a problem that I've found to be very, very pronounced in Mists of Pandaria. It was the horrible, horrible, terrible streamlining of quests to the point where it just felt like a damn slog. When Blizzard make quest lines just a linear path from hub to hub, it's convenient. You don't need to know where to go, you don't even need to know what to do. You just follow the marker and the game will take care of you. You're safe. But the problem is that this doesn't really, this really got to a lot of people, I think. Especially when you're doing multiple trips through zones, when the story wears off and the slog remains. And this linear fashion was all done for the benefit of the story, but once you've seen it once, the slog is still there. And this is a game where people level up multiple characters, of course. And then another problem is, you're supposed to feel like an adventurer. If everything is just a linear jump from place to place, you don't feel like an adventurer, you don't have any player agency. This is a big problem, and actually it was that level of player agency is what I loved about Northrend leveling. Now, at this point, all you can remember is that you're going slowly through a zone. You're not remembering the fun story or mechanics that would have kept your attention the first time. No, you're on your second time through a zone, and it's just damn boring. This isn't going to affect people the first time through, even if they are new, but it's going to affect that second character. And what happens is you just get stuck in this odd feeling where you know you're really bored, and you feel like you're in a rut. And you're just kind of... You're like a zombie. You're on autopilot. You're just grinding through the levels, not having that much fun. Now, why would you do that when you could just go to Steam and, say just today, buy Shadow Warrior for 75% off and have ridiculous, absurd fun? It's a really hard bargain for Blizzard to drive there, and it's not really a great way to have your game's leveling going. Another problem is that since you move from place to place at such a great speed, places actually lack the sense of place. Back in Wrath of the Lich King, places like Valen's Keep and Valgard, they felt like strong, imposing fortresses that you stayed in for a long time. Maybe they were being attacked from the outside, or they really just looked big and cool. But what really solidified what these places were was the amount of time that you spent in them, and that you spent interacting with characters inside these places. It just makes them feel far more real within the context of the world that you're exploring through, and the more that they emphasize that thing, I suppose, then the better leveling will come off. And while that really is lovely for a new expansion, sort of like maybe your first time, second time through Northrend, I think that this actually might be a worthy sacrifice for the sake of just cutting down that leveling. So yeah, maybe some of these old zones are they get a little bit old, they get a little bit sloggy, but at least you get through them quick and you see your levels dinging and dinging and dinging. Now, one thing, I do have some other options further on in this video that would perhaps combat the issue of multiple playthroughs, so we will get onto that in due course. Really, that whole last thing I said, I think it's just a greater problem for people who are at max level. The first time round, people are generally more focused on what is happening in terms of story, the new places they're seeing, the new characters they meet, the new mechanics they get to play around with. And a great thing like the system that I described above, about cutting out the bad quests, and buffing the experience, reducing the amount needed to level, it just means that the system feels really nice, and you really progress fast, and that feels good to a lot of players. Another great thing about a system like this for Old World and Outland is that it just keeps that feeling of exploration going, because you're always seeing new stuff, and it doesn't add much to Blizzard's workload. They don't necessarily have to go and make loads of new quests or anything like that. Of course, it would be painful to have to go back and gut some of the work they did for Cataclysm, but sometimes, they just have to swallow your pride and bite the bullet and do what's best for the game. Now, that said, I would be very, very sad if something were to happen to Northrend. I love that place to death, and I think the questing there is nearly perfect for what it is. Still, on the whole, I think this isn't a terrible way of Blizzard getting people through the old content, still having them enjoying it, and not making it take 50 quadrillion hours to get up to maximum level. And it's probably worth saying as well, me and you might be able to level up really quick with our heirlooms and our prior experience. Other players, nope. They just, they're new to the game. So of course, there would still be a lot, but far, far less work than a revamp, so I think this is probably the most, it's the most possible option, I suppose. Now, option 2 is one that I've seen on forums a lot, and it's just the flat-out skipping of content, basically allowing people to start at a higher level and then skip X amount of levels. Or, well, basically start at a higher level by skipping X amount of levels, I suppose. And if this were a thing, I think there would be a huge backlash from a decent amount of the current players, especially if it were too high. This would work similar to, say, the level 90 boost in Warlords of Draenor. People would be taken to a really cool Death Knight-like starter zone, where they get to unlock some fun new abilities and things like that along the way. This gets people into the game at a relatively high level, in a fun zone, and unlocks lots of different quests and talents and things. And abilities, but in a way where they at least get to understand how they work. So yeah, there's really part 1 of option 2, just kind of give people a little bit of a Death Knight style boost. Another alternate option is to just give people a boost to the previous expansion's maximum level once their first character hits maximum level. Basically, the Warlords of Draenor thing. I think this is actually fair enough because they already will have seen that content and they will sort of understand how spells and talents work. A second class in combination with a good starter tutorial zone could actually be pretty cool for a new player. This would give them a lot of incentive to actually hit that maximum level, since people would know that once they do hit that level, they're going to be able to play around with another high level character. Nothing like a nice little pouch of coke at the end of the tunnel, right? So yeah, I think that could actually work out pretty damn well. And it's also probably worth mentioning, if they were to do some sort of boosting mechanic like that, you would still have to go through at least a big chunk of leveling content, so of course if this was mixed with, say, the first option that I lay out, where you cut the XP and all that sort of stuff, then I think that would also work. Next we have option 3. Fuck the lot of it. I have seen a lot of people just say things like, remove questing, replace leveling with dungeons and PvP, and many other various exciting things like that, and I do not think this is the right way to go. It's called World of Warcraft for a reason. There is a world in which all that Warcraft happens. There just has to be a world involved with it somewhere. Massive big swathes of land in the world may as well not exist if they were to just remove the leveling curve completely. There has to be a world in which epic things can happen. Things like questing and stuff like that, they're all world building. They make this world larger, they give it more context, and they just allow a better backdrop in which the awesome things like your raiding and your PvP can happen. Another point is that often the convenient way is really not always that good, but actually in a way that people don't notice. Now, I will explain. Usually, this kind of issue is, it's the sort of thing where people, they just start saying and thinking they're having less fun, but they cannot quite put their finger on it. It's an overall reduction of quality. Now, this is what happens when they do things like, if they were to, say, make flying everywhere, make repair bills not a thing anymore, get rid of res sickness. None of these things, like no flying, repair bills, etc., none of them are convenient, but they are needed to reinforce the gameplay. And what I mean there is that there is a psychological death penalty in the game. Having no flying, as an example, means that players, instead of just dealing with, say, breaking an NPC out of a cage by using their flying map hack to just appear right beside the cage, no, they have to think, well shit, that cage is inside a fort. Maybe it's some sort of open-air fort, maybe it's behind a wall, but the point is that if you are flying, that wall may as well not exist, that fort may as well not exist. But that wall, that fort, whatever, can still be kind of cool, and you really erode that cool factor when you start, like, taking away things, basically, and adding too much convenience. So I do actually think that just removing leveling altogether would be a catastrophic move for the game. Next, we have option 4, and well, this is a bit of an odd one. The Caverns of Time and player choice are the main themes here. One of the problems is that we have too much goddamn content to go through. Yeah, Blizzard don't want us skipping out much of their delicious, glorious, lovely content. Well, here's an idea that kind of solves everything. We split things off. Now remember how you had a choice between, say, Vashir and Hyjal, or Borean Tundra and the Howling Fjord? Well, they could just do this with old expansions content. There really are so many ways that they can do this, and the benefits are that you can shorten questing, like just actual overall questing time, and still have it so the players will still have a new continent to explore when they go through an alts. This also means that all players will have a shorter and less annoying questing curve. This is really just an idea, but I'll do a few examples to outline the general concept to you. Once a player hits level 60, right? So this is the starting place. And maybe that level 60 has actually been, sort of had the option 1 applied to it, where it's just been cut down and made a little bit easier to get to. But once they hit level 60, they have a choice. Maybe they can get to level 80 via just doing Outland, or just doing Northrend, or perhaps they could go up to 85, or maybe even 90, just by picking one expansion and going through that expansion at the proper pace. Overall, this means the leveling time is far, far shorter, but what it doesn't do is it doesn't compromise on the quest design of the content that you're going through. Another way of doing this is by making it so that perhaps on your first character, you only have to do vanilla once. Maybe subsequent characters could just be boosted up to the point where they are level 60, and then they can choose a fresh new expansion to just run out and do. What this means is people can get multiple characters up to max level, while repeating as little content as possible, because often things are always the most fun the first time through, and this really capitalizes on that fact. It gives us more first-time experiences, gives new players more first-time experiences and subsequent characters, and it just means that the overall process to getting to max level is shorter and more fun. It's short and sweet, but of course it's not actually short, it's still relatively long in terms of how, most games are. Hell, Call of Duty campaigns like, 3.5, 4 hours? It's still pretty long, but it's far more palatable than saying, yeah, you now have 5 days worth of gameplay, have fun with that. By the way, most of it isn't fun. A bit of an issue there, right? So I think this could actually work quite well. In terms of story, they could perhaps be given a cutscene by, say, the Bronze Dragonflight that explains in short what happened in an expansion. It would have to be done in a way that is lore-friendly and not cheesy, though. So definitely not like that final Cataclysm cinematic. That didn't just make me want to turn it off, it made me want to rip out my eyes, rip out my ears, and maybe just, bang my head off a piece of glass until I got an aneurysm, because it was that damn painful. So they really would need to make sure that they don't cheeseball it up and make a piece of crap like they did for that cinematic. Apologies to people who did like that cinematic. Anyway, finally, I just have some words to round off this section of the video with. Now, this isn't another option, but just some points. So first, these options reduce questing time, and it means that people will unlock things faster. They will have less intellectual downtime because of this, and they will constantly have a new treat. This is really good for keeping people going. And I know this sounds really cold and stuff like that, but it's kind of like giving a dog a treat, just that me and you are the dog, and the treat is Colossus Smash. And I'm really okay with something like that. And I think it would actually be nice for a new player to constantly be saying like, hey, if you just, do half an hour more gameplay, then you'll get a new ability to play around with. Well, if you're a new player, then you think, just half an hour more, and you keep on going. And then also the faster acquisition of abilities will make character progression feel a bit faster, and perhaps since players are getting new abilities at a faster pace, rather than just kind of like having this big glacial thing building up, they actually start reading them and seeing what the fuss is about, because they notice, damn, I'm actually getting these ability things. Not an overwhelming rate, of course, but at a rate where it makes sense and is perhaps a little bit faster, because as times went on, we really do have our abilities spread out over so many levels that sometimes it just does get a bit damn old. I think definitely one loss from the Cataclysm talent system is the fact that you don't get a new trait every level. It's a pity. Anyway, it's also worth saying that I'm not 100% behind everything I said back there. I'm just throwing out some ideas to stimulate discussion and see what people think is interesting. Because really, I'm one person, and if this video is watched by maybe 1, 2, 3,000 people, hopefully it's 3+, that'd be lovely, but I'm sure the combined hive mind of all you lot is many, 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 many times smarter than me, and can definitely come up with good ideas. Maybe the YouTube comment section isn't the best place. I will have this video cross-posted onto the World of Warcraft forums, so if you do have any, constructive stuff to say, that's probably the best place for it. I think, the developers won't see this video, let's be honest, but if there is a good idea that bleeds onto that forum, maybe it just sort of bleeds into one of those discussions that they're having over in Anaheim. Maybe something gets in, you never know. And then finally, the last thing I have here in my list of bullet points is that the item squish makes numbers more readable and friendly, and the item squish is what's happening in Warlords of Draenor, where they're just kind of normalizing down the numbers. What this means is that numbers are, well, as I said, more readable and more friendly, so on a new player, it's a little bit less overwhelming. Oh, wow. 40 minutes. That is the longest video I have ever done that's been a constant, like a proper thing and not just some herpy-derpy Hearthstone. And actually, I only got, in terms of my big list of topics to cover and things in relation to this, I didn't even finish the damn thing, so I still have plenty to go. Next episode of this, we will be talking about the endgame of Warlords of Draenor and how that could really start to help us out with World of Warcraft, and maybe this will be on a third video, maybe not, it just depends if the other one runs too long or not, but then I'll be talking about some business things, because business is a bit of a personal interest of mine, and I find it really interesting to analyze trends and come up with strategies and things like that. I think it's kind of cool. So, yeah, we could have a look at that. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video, I would please encourage you to hit that thumbs up button, because it takes 1 second from you, and it helps me out more than you can know. So, yes, thank you very much. Like, hell, you've watched this for 40 minutes and 42 seconds. Thank you. That's crazy and brilliant, and I really hope you enjoyed it. Anyway, that's been a really prolonged damn outro, hasn't it? Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.